Morning, good afternoon, good evening. There have been many people expressing the opinion that democracy does not work. I'm not saying democracy is perfect, but as a system of government, democracy is the system of government that history will show you has worked consistently and for the good of the majority. The tendency here is to look at some of the so-called democratic countries and pretend that they're a democratic country when they are in fact a dysfunctional political system, an autocracy, a dictatorship disguised as a democracy. Many people have often said, for instance, that democracy does not work in Africa. Democracy does not work for Zimbabwe. And yet when you ask them, has Zimbabwe ever held free, fair, and credible elections? The answer is no. So it's not a democracy then. Just because you hold regular elections in which a significant part of your electorate is held beholden to those in positions of power and authority, or are easily conned to do anything that they are told, and you call that a democracy? No. Democracy, as defined by the ancient Greeks, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people, works best if the voters are educated, knowledgeable, objective, and diligent in carrying out their secret duty of holding those in public office to account. Get the electorate, the voters, the people, to have those qualities, your democracy will work and for the good of society. Here is an individual who was expressing an opinion on democracy and why it doesn't work.
Grace of democracy is that it reveals the numerical strength of idiots who unfortunately are the majority of the world. Nelson Rodriguez once said, democracy has its charm. It gives a voice to everyone, including idiots. And that, my friends, is the system's greatest misfortune. Where every head has a vote, it is not the wisest who prevail. It's the loudest, and the louder they scream, the less they think. Most people are not thinkers. They're repeaters, trading wisdom for slogans, confusing opinions with intelligence, and feeling personally offended by the truth. Democracy puts the fate of the world in the hands who don't even know what fate means. So the worst rise and the best, and the idiots rule with applause. Ironically, democracy is fair. It gives us exactly what the majority deserve.
Well, what he has just defined there is exactly what I was talking about. An electorate that does not have the education, or knowledge, who are not knowledgeable, who are not objective, and who are not diligent. Those people should not have been given the vote. The people, as I said, is the key to a healthy and working democracy. But the second most important is that the elected officials And in our case, in the case of Zimbabwe and other countries, the founding fathers must themselves be committed to giving real meaningful power to the people. They must be committed to a democracy. In other words, they are willing to create a political system in which the people are educated, knowledgeable, objective, and diligent, and hold those in positions of power and authority to account. That has not always been the case. Notably, in a country like Zimbabwe, ZANU-PF wanted to impose a de facto one-party state in Zimbabwe. The Lancaster House did not allow them to do so. And so Mugabe and his cronies were thinking of how else can we achieve what we want, a de facto one-party state in which we, the ruling class, have absolute power. In their case, they sought to achieve that by making sure that there was universal suffrage. And then they controlled as many of the voters as possible. So in the 1980 elections, by the time ZANU-PF came back to Zimbabwe, the regime had decided that its freedom fighters, majority of whom would not be withdrawn from the field, they would stay in the field. And their campaign message to the people was that if ZANU-PF does not win the election, the Bush war would continue. In other words, they were holding the gun to the electorate. And many people who were involved in the 1980 elections would tell you that there were many areas in Zimbabwe which were no-go areas for other parties other than ZANU-PF. And in the end, the people voted to end the Bush war. Far cry from a democracy. That wasn't a democracy. They thought they'd stop the Bush war, but in reality they did not. Because 3 years down the line, ZANU-PF was back on the war footing. This time, the Kukura-Wundi massacre. And the people have never gained their right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. They've always been beholden to ZANU-PF. When the America's founding fathers wrote the Constitution, their commitment to democracy could not be denied. This is what Benjamin Franklin, one of the founding fathers of American state as we know it, said following the Constitutional Convention in 1787. A lady asked him well, Doc, what if you got a republic or a monarch? And Franklin's reply was, a republic, if you can hold on to it. As much as the founding fathers had given the people of America a healthy and functioning democratic system of government, the people themselves had to hold on to it. The people, the American people, did hold on to it. And that can be attributed to the fact that the American voters have, on the whole, had the knowledge, the objectivity, the diligence to carry out their most secret duty of holding those in public office to account. Yes, of course, sometimes they have made a mistake. They've elected the wrong leader. The beauty of it is, in a healthy and functioning democracy, the electorate will have the 4 years or 6 years, whatever it is, to reflect on it and realize they made a mistake and be able to correct it, as long as elections are free, fair, and credible. That is the key issue. In a country like Zimbabwe, we've never had free, fair, and credible elections. ZANU-PF has held the rural voters particularly beholden to the party. Indeed, ZANU-PF has deliberately kept the rural voters poor for its own selfish political ends. This is no secret. Here is Ms. Margaret Longo speaking to that very issue.
They have wrong priorities, especially the current government. How can you go and build an airport which services a few people, and the majority are the elite and the so-called investors? Look at the rural. I made you come to interview me because I wanted you to have the experience of the roads that we are using. If we go today to our hospital there, you feel pity with that's a hospital in a rural area. If we go to our clinic, you feel pity. We have no piped water here. Do you know the reason why the rural people vote for ZANU-PF? One, they're intimidated. Two, the policy is that the rural people should remain poor and subservient to the government. They should remain poor, because if they remain poor, they continue singing the song for their master. This is why these people have been impoverished. It's for a reason. But at the moment, if you economically empower these people, they'll go out of hand. ZANU-PF will never have control over them.
Well, that is a fundamental truth that many Zimbabweans have continued to ignore. In the 1970s, the late John Robertson, a banker, economist of renown, told Ian Smith that if the government was to give the rural people title deeds to just a few acres on which their mud hut stands, the people would build for themselves a decent homestead. They will improve that land by planting fruit trees, digging a well, adding value to it. The banks will even be prepared to loan them the money for those things. Because when you've got the title deeds, whatever improvements you make, it's a collateral security. If you should want to move from there, you can sell the house with the land. But when you don't have title deeds, the land a meter from your house belongs to somebody else. And so if you want to sell the house, you sell the house, but they don't own the land. And so it is common in rural areas, for instance, where somebody, when they move, they sell the house and they find themselves in a sticky situation where the land outside the house belongs to somebody else. ZANU-PF, Ian Smith refused to give title deeds to the blacks because he argued, if you give them title deeds, they have economic empowerment. And the next thing they would want is political empowerment. He wasn't prepared to give them that. ZANU-PF, John Robertson took the same plan to Robert Mugabe soon after independence. And Mugabe rejected it for the same reasons. The same reasons that Margaret Longo there has just reiterated. So we have got here a population. The majority of our people live in the rural area, 60 to 70%, and they're being deliberately kept poor for political, selfish reasons. They cannot afford to vote for anybody. The only time when Zimbabweans were able to come to what one could consider the nearest to a free, fair, and credible election was in 2008. When ZANU-PF realized they were losing, they took over the electoral system. And the people were punished, in fact, because that year the regime launched what they call Operation Mafoterapapi, where the idea was to punish those people who had rejected the party in the March vote. The rest is history. So therefore, then, for anyone to be calling Zimbabwe a democracy is a mockery. Zimbabwe is not a democracy. And for them to be saying, oh, democracy does not work in Zimbabwe, how would you know that? You've never tried democracy in Zimbabwe. I think what we need is a commitment to giving the ordinary people a meaningful say in the governance of the country. That should not be negotiable. And the collateral of that is equally true. No one should ever believe that they have the divine right to rule the country. ZANU-PF has rigged the elections because they believe they have the right to rule the country. They don't. They never did. The people supported the liberation war. And one of the main reason why they supported it is they genuinely believed in one man, one vote, that they would have a meaningful say in the governance of the country. And the vote that they are now being given is a mockery. They are frog marched to attend ZANU-PF rallies and frog marched to go to polling stations to vote for the regime. How anyone can consider that a free, fair, and credible elections beggars belief. So I come back to the argument. Democracy as government of the people, by the people, and for the people works. And it works best if the voters are educated, knowledgeable, objective, and diligent in carrying out their secret duty of holding those in public office to account. Democracy is like a dance, tango. It takes two to tango. The people must be the leader, and the elected officials must follow. The minute the elected officials dictate the dance, there is a problem. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.